Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our educational info webinar on COVID-19 and myeloma, how to maximize your health, happiness, and immune function while you're at home. Before we get to the presentation, just wanted to go through a few things with you. Well, first of all, I'm Gabriel Licolacerdo. I'm the Manager of Education and Patient Services. If you've tuned into any of our other webinars, I'm usually the person that starts them off. We'll be doing a lot more webinars in the coming weeks. Firstly, I'd like to thank our industry partners who without them it would not be possible to do these webinars. So Amgen, Binding Site, Bristol Myers Squibb, Celgene, Janssen, Sanofi, and Takeda. Thank you to them for sponsoring these events. What are we doing at Myeloma Canada? We are working from home just like the majority of people these days. We're doing our part to try to flatten that curve. Due to that, we'll be doing a lot more online meetings. We have online virtual support groups on Facebook for anyone who wants to take advantage of those. That information can be found on our website. Like I mentioned, we'll be doing a lot more webinars. A lot of our in-person events have either been canceled or postponed. You could see the list here on your screen. One big event that was canceled is our national conference. So that was a big 2-day meeting where a lot of the presentations are going to be offered virtually now in the coming weeks, in English and in French. So if you have any questions or want to know more about what's being scheduled, please feel free to contact us. Our contact information is right there. All of these webinars are recorded. They're recorded and they're available either on our YouTube channel, both on our YouTube channel and on our website. If you go to youtube.com and type in Myeloma Canada in the search bar, the first link you'll see here is Myeloma Canada. If you click on the subscribe button, you can get notifications every time we upload a new movie. That way you can stay up to date with all the new videos. From our website, myeloma.ca, if you click on the resources tab right here, a little menu will pop up, and you'll be able to click on educational videos. That'll bring you to our YouTube channel. So just an easier way to get to our YouTube channel. How do you ask questions? So during the webinar, you can type in all of your questions. So in your GoToWebinar software, you see there's a little gray box here that says questions. If you click on the arrow, this will open up and you can type in your question there. When you click send, I will receive the questions. At the end of the presentation, I will ask our presenter the questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Rob Rutledge, who is an oncologist and associate professor of medicine and the CEO and chair of Healing in Cancer. Dr. Rutledge, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Gabrielle, and Myeloma Canada. And really hats off to the people who are watching or listening to this presentation. You really can make a tremendous difference in your health and your capacity to fight off a virus and your capacity to get through treatments and so on. And today I'm going to take you through the lens of what you can do to do that from home, and particularly, Gabriel, how am I going to, oh, there we go. Particularly, I want to think about working with anxiety, because I think one of the major issues is that people with myeloma and people during a COVID pandemic are feeling anxious and they're stressed. And it's normal, it's expected. And so what I want to do is to be able to empower you over this next 45 minutes or so with practical ways that really decrease your anxiety levels, which ultimately will allow your body to be stronger. You'll be happier, and your immune function as a consequence will also be able to fight off any virus and so on. I want to look at fears directly, because oftentimes we shy away from the difficult stuff, and the fact that you're even listening to this presentation really will allow you to work with those fears and diminish those fears, and your anxiety levels can decrease and you can feel much better. And so I really want I want to be kind of open and honest with what you're going through, and then also empower you with ways that can really help, feel better, function better in the long term. The other thing I'd really say is, and I've just seen this so often within the cancer world, is that you are much stronger, you're much more resilient than you could ever know. And so I have this conversation with, someone who's had a cancer diagnosis or myeloma diagnosis, and they kind of describe a worst case scenario, and they imply, oh, I couldn't get through that. And yet I see them at a later point in time and they're getting through it. I see them like a year later, they're still going strong. You're strong in this very moment, and you're stronger than you'd expect. And your loved ones around you are stronger than you expect. And oftentimes we scare ourselves unnecessarily. And I just want to point to that we have that capacity within ourselves. And I want to be able to maximize that capacity through this seminar. This is what I'm going to talk about, the kind of thinking big picture, like how do you get the best care from the medical system, what you can do in the day-to-day in terms of your attitude, physical, healthy activities, what do you do if you get stressed out, how do you work with difficult thoughts, and then really taking kind of a bigger perspective, like the true empowerment piece is how do you want to live your life through this diagnosis. So how do I see this? I am an oncologist. I'm a radiation oncologist. I specialize in breast, prostate, and pediatric cancers, but I've seen and treated lots of people with myeloma. I want to give the perspective of getting the best care possible. And it's this integration of the two sides, the medical system and what you can do to empower yourself, levels of body, mind, and spirit. It's that combination or marriage that really makes a difference. And interestingly enough, it starts out with understanding what's happening. Your anxiety or your stress level has a kind of evolutionary advantage that, it pushes you to try to, well, what's happening? What can I do to help myself? How do I advocate? How to get the best care from the system? What's going to happen? So those anxieties are pushing you to watch this seminar. They're pushing you to learn more about your disease, what to expect in the future. And those are good things. So you want to work at that. Oftentimes, though, it gets out of hand and you kind of stress yourself unnecessarily or too much. And I'm going to talk about that issue. But the point is, the empowerment piece is extremely important. I'm not going to take the time to really talk about how to get the best care from the medical system, but essentially the idea is that you need to advocate for yourself. And especially during COVID, especially during the fact that there can be some delays in treatments, some phone consultations, feeling like the physicians are occupied trying to take care of others' issues, you need to continue to advocate for yourself. You need to make those phone calls, ask those questions. And oftentimes the physicians or your hematologist or your cancer specialist works with a nurse, and the nurse knows 99% of that information. And so the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you want to know what's going to happen, what you need, what your responsibilities are, keep on asking that question. So that's the kind of medical side. And then so you get the best care from that side. And then, it's pretty obvious what we're going to talk about in terms of exercise and the physical stuff, how the mind-body works. And we're going to talk about neuroscience and tapping into your wise and compassionate brain. So the healing skills and what you can practice proactively. And lastly, understanding a bigger perspective, finding meaning, in your life, in your way. Find what's most important to you, what is most valuable for you, and try to express that in the world. So we'll talk about that as well. So I see that as a complete package that really maximizes your health and happiness. Okay, so I said information is power, but oftentimes we kind of get out of hand, and you have to be able to see you're doing everything for yourself right now. You're self-isolating, you're protecting yourself, you're following the social distancing, you're working to make sure you're getting safe food, et cetera, et cetera. At some point in time, you have to recognize that there's nothing else that you can do. You're maximizing on that. So you might as well let go of the things you can't control and focus on the things that you can control, which is really the purpose of the seminar. And what I found is the remarkable cancer survivors, the people that do exceptionally well, are the ones who no longer worry about what's going to happen in the future. So they've already done that thinking, they've done their planning, they're doing all the smart things, and then they let go. They let go of the things they can't control. They don't even worry about recurrence. They're not even, thinking about, dying of their disease. They no longer focus there. They put their energy and attention into the things they can control, like how they bring their spirit into this world, how they connect with other people, a sense of gratitude and peace. And I find that if you're in that psychological space, it really does boost immune function and allow you to get through your treatment better. And that can have a tremendous influence on the physical side of it. But they don't focus there. They focus to what you can control. So the other part of this is the paradox of accepting what is happening in your life. Because A, you have a myeloma diagnosis, right, which is a difficult cancer to work with, which is kind of the truth of it. And B, there's a COVID pandemic where the virus is out there. It can affect people who've had cancer diagnosis, it can affect older people. You're at risk in some sense of getting sick from the COVID virus. But if on top of that, you're saying, oh, this shouldn't be this way, this is awful. It's like you're fighting against you're angry, you're frustrated, you're stressed, you're adding a whole layer of difficulty onto the situation. And whenever you're fighting with reality, you're going to lose. And so the idea, again, the remarkable cancer survivors, the people that do exceptionally well, are truly able to see the situation as it is right now. Take a very pragmatic, level-headed view. Okay, this is the situation. What can I do? I'm going to let go of the rest of it. Okay, so the acceptance piece, focus on what you can do. So the other thing that I think is really important is a ritual that I practice every day, and it's really about its meaning, but it's also presents a practicality. Because the fact is, you could allow yourself to be super stressed and upset unnecessarily, or you can consciously bring yourself back to the fact that you have a choice. And so you can set your intention and set your attention particularly as to how you want to respond to the situation. So instead of letting the winds of the world blow you this way and that, put yourself grounded in this earth and say to yourself, okay, well, this is how I want to manifest my life. And I do it in 3 ways. First of all, I do it as a daily practice. So first thing in the morning, I wake up, usually with my wife, we meditate together for about 15 minutes. And the first 10, 12 minutes of that is like pure mindfulness, pure bringing my attention back to the here and now. Because the fact is, that's where you find your resilience and that's where you're happiest. I mean, when you're worried about what might happen in the future, you're regretting something that happened in the past, you're losing your kind of life force energy. So I'm practicing mindfulness. The next phase of my ritual is I put my hands upward and I say, let me be loving, let me be kind, let me bring my spirit into this world, let me be a benefit to other people. So I'm focusing on what's important to me. And the last part of my rituals, I actually do like 3 prostrations, kind of my head down, my hands up. It's like submitting to the fact I can't control everything. I can only control what I can control. So when I do that, it helps me to remember what's most important and how I want to respond to the situation. The second thing is, maybe you're going into a difficult situation. Maybe you're going for a visit at some point in time, into the medical system, or there's something else that you have to deal with, like maybe dealing with a difficult relative or something like that. So just before doing that, you bring yourself back home. Like you're just about to go to chat with your doctor. Maybe you're in the midst of treatment. You need to chat with them about, how the chemotherapy is going and so on. And it can be an anxious moment. But then you remembered yourself, how do I want to be in this circumstance? Well, I want to be grounded and I want to be clear thinking and I want to advocate for myself if I need to. I need a sense of confidence. So you're setting your intention before you're going into the actual situation. So that's the second way that you bring your best self into the scenario. Lastly, when you're in the midst of the fluster, in the midst of the chaos, when you're feeling most agitated or upset, then you remember, how do I want to respond? And then you can set your intention in that moment to, how you want to respond to the situation. So again, it's like choosing your best self. Whatever's most valuable to you, you choose to do that and you practice that, and your brain gets better and better at doing that. The more you practice the state of mind, the more it becomes a trait of character. I want to also just give you a little bit of the neurophysiology, so how your brain works. From an evolutionary perspective, they have this something called the hand model of the brain. So you can think of the wrist as kind of the spinal cord, and then the base of the thumb is your reptilian brain. It's the fight or flight part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that gets really agitated and upset when you're stressed. The other parts of your brain are telling that part of your brain that you're agitated and upset and there's something to be feared. So that's the reptilian brain, fight or flight. The next layer of the brain is the thumb itself, which is the limbic system, the emotional brain. I call it the stressed or irritable brain. And lastly, over top are the fingers, which is your frontal lobe. And that's the wise and compassionate part of your brain. And all day long, you kind of flip back and forth between being your best self, engaging your frontal lobe, and then the thumb itself, which is the irritable stress brain. So you go back and forth. And if you're stressed, you flip your lid. Or if you're hungry, you flip your lid. So you want to try as much as possible to stay in the wise and compassionate part of your brain, because that allows your immune system to function better, your physical body works better, you'll be happier. So your brain, and it's normal to be anxious. It's normal. You're not gonna stay in kind of Zen, calm state all the time. It just doesn't happen to us. We are human beings having a human experience, and we're gonna flip our lids kind of on and off throughout the day. And so we want to be able to bring ourselves back whenever possible to that part of it. So, and as I said before, the anxiety can motivate you. So if you're feeling anxious, then you put that into ways that can actually help yourself. So how is it that we choose to live in that wise and compassionate brain? How do you choose to be your best self more often? And that's really the crux of this seminar right now. So first of all, I think about creating the conditions in which your brain, the wise and compassionate brain, is much more likely to be online, right? So it's kind of like having a car. You want to maintain your car, change the oil, make sure there's gas in it, service it, so that the engine keeps on working, well as the years go by. In the same way, you want to take care of your brain, like what's between your temples needs to be taken care of, like watering a plant, for instance. So I think about, well, let's create the conditions in which you're more likely to have your brain, work well and be calm. And it's, I say that partly because, when you do these things, then it helps out everything. So the advice in terms of settling down your nervous system, your nervous system, has the same benefits on everything else. Okay, if you're watching, if you could do just in this moment, stand up just for a moment. And I'm just going to pull myself back from there. And I just want you to kind of shake your body a little bit in some way or form. Just kind of get out a stretch, or feel like your back needs a little stretch. One of the things that, especially being at home, you probably need to get up every 20 minutes or so. It's not healthy to be stuck to a screen for too many hours a day. And yes, there are lots of issues around self-isolation and not wanting to get outside and not get too close to the crowds. But the fact is, you can exercise in your home. So whether it's turning on some dance tunes, I was self-isolated for a couple of weeks because I came back from the States just a little bit too late. And so I had to work out in the backyard every day, and it was getting pretty boring. And I don't have a small backyard. So I put in my little earbuds and I play the dance tune. So I dance around as my exercise, and I'd shadow box a little bit and do different stretches and all that type of stuff. So yes, it looked kind of weird, but frankly, I got a good workout for 2 weeks. And so you guys can do the same things, whether it's putting on some dance tunes or following a yoga program that you see on the internet, or Tai Chi, or an exercise class. You know, there are live video conference opportunities, but I highly recommend exercise, exercise, exercise. I recommend that as kind of the #1 stress reducer, is to really let the tensions out. And I say something called shaking your bones. It's like a deer who escapes the pack of wolves will go to the field where it's you know, safe, and kind of shake its body and kind of release that tension. In the same way, you guys can do the same thing. Shake it out. Let the tension out of your body through exercise. It releases the happy hormones. It allows you to get through treatments in the future much more easily. I can't stress that one enough. Be creative. You know, work yourself up to 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. Do something that's fun, slight sweat on the brow. Have fun. Okay, obviously diet. Now, I've been learning a lot about this. I'm not an expert in diet, but I have been learning an awful lot about diet and how you can actually improve, you know, your health in lots of different ways. Now, the first thing around immune function is there's no one diet or supplement that maximizes your immune function. The only thing you can do is get depleted in something and your immune function drops a little bit. What I understand is that there are multiple micronutrients and minerals and vitamins that contribute to immune function. And the best way to get that is to really add a variety of foods. Secondly, I'm really strong in this. Really, I think a vegetarian diet is the best diet. If you're going to eat meat, definitely not red meat, maybe a little bit of fish. But the idea is to feed your gut the healthy bacteria, and that's a whole talk by itself. But there's also what they call anti-inflammatory diet. You don't want the inflammation from your food in your gut to be adding more inflammation into your body, right? So plant-based foods, at least 50% of your plate. You know, find out the good proteins, nutrients. Do it. This is where you can do your research and figure it out and talk to the experts and really get you know, a great diet. Secondly, there's something called a low glycemic diet, and that essentially means that you don't want the spikes in your sugar levels, right? So if you drink like a glass of pop, it's like half of that is like pure sugar, and what happens is the sugar gets into your body and it spikes up, and you probably don't feel good when the sugar is high, but then the system takes over and drops your sugar down and often overcompensates, and then your sugar levels are too low, and you actually flip your lid at that point because you turn your frontal lobe offline in order to preserve the main functions. And this stressed, irritable brain is the hangry brain. It's irritable, it's more easily stressed. So when you get a too low of a sugar, you're getting your stressed, irritable brain doing the thinking for you. I want to eat cookies now. And that's just not good for you, right? So the idea is to eat complex nutrients, complex carbohydrates, add a little bit of protein with the meal so it slows the digestion or absorption of sugar. So you get that nice smooth curve. And I found out that for me, it's oatmeal in the morning with some nuts that really gives me that curve, so that, you know, eating breakfast at 8 a.m., I'm still feeling strong and thinking well at noon. And if I eat the kind of sugary stuff, I don't get that kind of same capacity to think. And lastly, you just want to feed your brain, right? So the healthy omega-3s, get that in flaxseed and hemp hearts and other things along with the fatty fish. Anyway, so there's that you can control. Even in the midst of COVID, you can make a tremendous difference in your health. That one's worth working on as well. Sleep and sleep hygiene. So you can't force yourself to have a good night's sleep, but you can create the conditions in which a good night's sleep is more likely to happen. And especially decreasing your stress levels. We're going to talk about meditation and so on. Having a routine, staying away from the high stim stuff, which we're going to talk about shortly. Staying in the dark at night, not even 90 seconds of bright light can suppress positive hormones like melatonin from being released in your sleep. I also, I am a napper. I agree with napping. I had like a 15-minute nap before this presentation right now. And there's good data that does kind of decrease the kind of nervous tension. No, we don't want to be napping for like 2 hours, getting their sleep cycle thrown off. We want to be getting up at the same time each morning. It's really good to have a routine every day, including using your mind, right? So it's like having a hobby, learning, connecting, and having a normal routine throughout the day when you're at home is really healthy in terms of promoting that that sleep cycle. Lastly, this one's probably the one that we don't do that probably can have the biggest influence on you. So it's like practicing relaxation. Like my meditation practice, I'm practicing bringing my attention back into the here and now. And it doesn't have to be meditation, could be qigong, could be a body scan, any activity in which you are consciously working at bringing your attention back to the activity at home. So when I say relaxation, I don't say go have a hot bath or go walk in the forest, which those are great things by themselves, but that's not the same as the technique or the skill of bringing your attention back to the here and now. And again, when you practice that or meditation, it really strengthens the frontal lobe of your brain, the wise, compassionate part of your brain, which also dampens down the stress and irritable part of your brain. So when your frontal lobe's going, you're better able to see what's happening and settle down your, the anxiety part of this. Maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience of meditation, just because it's helpful. When I meditate, and I've been meditating for 20 years, it's a very similar experience. I bring my attention back to my breath, and within about 3 seconds of starting my meditation, I'm starting to think about, what I need to do today, myeloma, COVID. I have to have that presentation ready for this afternoon. And at some point in time, I recognize that I'm thinking, and I bring my attention back to my breath, and then I'm off thinking about what happened yesterday, and we had that staff meeting, and one of my kids, I have to treat him on the weekend, and maybe I shouldn't have said that. And so I'm bringing my attention back again when I'm thinking, and I'm off again. And it's like back and forth. And this is 20 years later. So the thinking is not the issue. It's the muscle of getting a stronger attention with time that really is helpful. So I want you to, I think you should really pursue this one. Bring down what you call the stressometer, right? So you can be going through your life like agitated, upset, flustered, or you can decide I'm going to, the outward world is going to present me with the same challenge, but I'm going to be in a much more centered, calm, peaceful, and clear thinking state. And when I'm in this state of mind, right? So same challenges, but it's a much healthier perspective, and that's way better for your immune system. And they know that even from a study of 8 weeks of mindful meditation, they could see that the participants responded to the flu vaccine much better. So they had a higher and better immune reaction to the flu vaccine if they're practicing meditation than the control group. So again, you practice that, you're more peaceful, you're happier, your immune function is better. And it's something you can get better and better and better at as the months and years go by. And your brain will continue to change, right? So if you're stressed and flustered, that part of your brain that does that for you gets stronger and stronger and stronger until it becomes the norm for you. And if you practice relaxation, different part of the pathways get stronger and stronger and stronger. This part starts to prune down and die off. The stress pathways die off. This gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right? And then when you need to, you can tap into the relaxation response much more easily. And we'll talk about that shortly. But it's practice, practice, practice. So I'd suggest starting out with like 10 minutes per day. Recognize that you're still going to have that chattering mind. And just, if you're the type of person that thinks 1,000 miles an hour, good, you got lots of opportunity then to bring your attention back to that. Okay, the last one I'd say is because of our human evolution, we're also wired to respond to touch, right? So if you're living with somebody, and if it's possible, then ask for that hug. Maybe even like my wife and I, we have a ritual of hugging for the first 10 minutes of the day and hugging for the last 10 minutes of the day. And in fact, sometimes like I'm so kind of wound up from the day, I ask my wife, can you please just like give me a really nice hug or a really nice rub on the shoulders? And it really, it's like there's some type of subconscious message that says, I'm safe, I'm part of the tribe, I'm being taken care of. And that actually really settles down the kind of stress levels as well. If you don't have that opportunity to kind of ask for a hug, give a hug or a cuddle, then you can actually kind of self-touch, like by rubbing your hands or going through like a protocol where you kind of touch the various parts of the body in turn before you go to sleep. And again, we're so wired to this, like rubbing your belly, for instance, we're so wired to this that it can actually settle down your your stress function, stress levels. Okay, lastly, and it's harder to do, but obviously what I'm trying to do is say be proactive instead of watching TV all day long. Do the things that nourish your soul. Do the things like learning is energizing. Why not learn? Like watching the seminar, for instance. Do a new hobby. Reach out to somebody via video conference. Learn a different software. There's lots of stuff that allows you to connect with others. I won't talk about so much about getting into nature because it's harder to do these days. So, all right. So that's the kind of proactive ways. Those are the ways that you can actually empower your body, allow yourself to think more clearly through your frontal lobe. But there's also things you can avoid. And so I have the question for you. How much information do you need each day now in order to stay attuned with what's happening in the world and what you need to do in terms of the myeloma side of it? And I would suggest to you probably 15 to 20 minutes of radio news is all you need at this point in time. And what I would highly recommend to you is to not watch the television news, and especially not before you go to bed. That last hour or two really needs to be a calming period of time. I mean, the news is meant to be sensational, and it doesn't represent kind of the true reality that we're each living right now, right? And you have the capacity to work with that reality right now. So, not having the big arguments before you go to bed, or too much social media. It's like, it's not good for your brain because you're seeing too much life all at once. It's better to stay in a more calm, peaceful state. Obviously, there are other, habits that are not healthy for you. You want to decrease our exposure and our stress from those activities. Okay, so that's you gain a resilience. You get stronger. Your brain gets more wired to experience calm. But you are going to lose it sometimes. You are going to think about things. There is going to be like a medical appointment. You're going to have questions. It's like, oh, I'm stressed. I'm flustered. And the first thing is to recognize when you're flustered. What are the symptoms that your body tells you, like, the beating heart or the breath or the sweaty palms or the sore jaw? There are lots of kind of physical symptoms that will tell you that you're feeling stressed. And there can be emotional, like when you're feeling angry or irritated or frustrated or sad or withdrawn, that can be a recognition. Or when you start thinking in certain ways, you're perseverating or you're, very negative in your mind. Those can all be cues to say, oh, I lost it. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed. What should I do? And when you recognize that, you want to be able to know beforehand what your plan is, what your skill is. And we're going to go over a couple of skills that are going to help you get through this. One of the key things is to recognize, just to be able to watch, like a meta consciousness or an observer consciousness, to be able to watch your life. Oh, there's Rob getting anxious again, or oh, there's those thoughts again. So, oh, did I just think that? Or oh, I'm feeling these sensations in my body. And as soon as you take that kind of bigger perspective, you're kind of above the battleground, it allows you an empowerment piece to allow you to choose more easily. If you can't talk yourself down, right? So for the most part, we can say, oh, I'm feeling frustrated and stressed. This is not worth it. I can be more focused and calm right now. I'm not going to go there, right? So you could actually talk yourself through it. For the most part, we're human. It's very hard to do, just to talk yourself out of it until you get very practiced at it and until you can kind of tap into the relaxation part of your brain. So a few strategies. So you recognize, you're stressed. So there's a breathing technique that we're going to learn together in which we become much more mindful of the sensations of breath and body. One of the kind of tricks is, for instance, you can even do this right now if you want to. You can slump back in your chair and just kind of allow your body kind of fall back and kind of head down, and maybe even pretend that you're chewing, like chewing gum. And by doing that, this is what I call body up. Your body is becoming relaxed. Your body is saying, I'm safe, I don't have to worry. And it sends a signal up to the brain to say, my body is safe, therefore I must be safe. So you can pretend you're relaxed and you will feel more relaxed. I did talk about self-soothing, right, through touch. If I get really stressed, I'm going to rub my forearms or tap my arms, right, or rub my belly. You can have a strategy ready to go when you're really flustered. Another one is, remember what it's like to feel good, right? Oh yeah, I remember when the grandkids were over and it was really fun and everybody was having a good time and joking and laughing. We had a really nice dinner. So you can kind of remember which primes the part of your relaxation breath, the happy, positive part of your brain to generate that feeling, right? So again, it's another way of kind of talking yourself through it. Obviously, just talking to somebody, being open and honest. And sometimes I preface that conversation. So when I come home to my wife, I'll say something like, hon, I had a hard day. I don't want you to correct me or offer me any advice. I just like you to listen to what I went through today because I need to get this off my chest, right? So I'm setting the culture of, I'm going to be vulnerable and open, and I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling. And oftentimes just like putting a label on this, I'm frustrated or I'm stressed or I'm feeling agitated or angry, without kind of pointing fingers at the world and saying the world's the problem. I'm actually owning the emotions. And I think that's actually helpful as well. So just talking with somebody, again, because we're wired, is very, very helpful. Okay, so in the midst of it, wow, you're stressed, you're flustered. How do you settle yourself down? The issue is that you're scaring yourself. 99.9% of the time, you're scaring yourself with the potential things that could happen in the future, the hypothetical situations, right? And so it's this chattering mind, no, it's bad. If I get COVID, I'll get really sick. They'll have to take me to hospital. My family won't be able to take it. So you're kind of creating all this kind of chatter in your mind that's scaring you, and your body knows no difference, right, between a real threat and the hypothetical threat. So in some sense, if you can see that, and the earlier you recognize, the easier it is to settle down, press the pause button. Press the pause button in the situation, and you're let go of the problem thoughts, by becoming very curious of the physical body. And you guys can do this with me right now. Become very curious about the physical sensations in your body. What does your body feel like? What does your breath feel like? Be very curious without labeling or thinking. Next, and you can put a hand on the lower abdomen if you want to. Take 4 slow breaths. And again, use that same mindfulness of physical sensation. What does that feel like to breathe? And the tweak around this is to take a long, slow, smooth out breath, because that's the part of the nervous system that's related to the relaxation side that sends a signal up from your diaphragm right to your brain to say, I'm safe, I'm good. So that allows you to kind of get back. You're letting go of your stress brain. You're coming back to the frontal lobe part of this, and you're thinking more clearly. And then you can talk to yourself. You can reassure yourself, I can get through this. I've been through difficult situations before. Let's just take this one step at a time. So press the pause button, get very curious about the physical sensations, slow, smooth breath, and then reassure yourself. And that will Won't necessarily get you back to perfect, but it will settle you down to the point where you can think more clearly and make a better decision. Okay, the next thing as I'm pointing to is the idea that our thoughts are often the issue. The thoughts are often what's driving the anxiety, right? As an example, through this cognitive therapy, which I'm pointing to in this slide right here, like people who say they're no good, they're worthless, they're inadequate, that leads to depression. So it's the core belief that's causing the emotional response. And if you can change the core belief to say we all have intrinsic beauty and strength, that will help the emotional response to the situation. So I'm basing on David Byrne's book and what we've done during our weekend retreats. So the bottom line to this is you can change how you think, your core beliefs, and ultimately you can read the last point there at the bottom of the slide, which is that will help you change how you feel, the emotional response, your mood, your outlook, your attitude, your productivity. Like you can feel much better by simply believing and changing the core beliefs into healthy, positive, and true core beliefs. Like you want to still work with reality, right? And so we use a 3-column technique that you're seeing on the slide here. You'll see up top that there's a situation, which is just the raw reality of what's happened. And then oftentimes we have distressing thoughts that are automatic thoughts. And if we can recognize, oh, I'm thinking that way, then we can work through the 2nd column. And ultimately we work to the 3rd column, which is the wise and compassionate response. That's the part of your frontal lobe that allows you to be kind to yourself, acknowledge the difficulty, see a bigger perspective, and be encouraging, right? So let's go through some examples. Might be the easiest way to do this. So let's say you're thinking about an upcoming medical visit, and it's in the midst of the COVID scenario. You're in the next couple months, for instance. There's COVID. Oh, I got to go in the medical situation. So that's just the truth. That's, it's COVID and you have a medical appointment. On top of that, the extra then becomes, oh no, I can't handle this. This is too much. It's never going to work out. My life is totally out of control, right? So then you can kind of see there's a kind of sense of exaggeration, a sense of kind of absolute language. And through the 2nd column, if how do you feel emotionally? If you think and believe that adds more stress. Stress is a body reaction. It's not helpful to work yourself out. And number 4 is, how is it exaggerated or irrational? It's exaggerated because you're saying to yourself, I can't handle this. Actually, you don't know if you can handle it or not. You probably can. Is this too much? Well, it is a lot, but maybe not too much. It's never going to work out. Does that happen 100% of the time? It could work out. Your life is totally out of control. Yes, there's some elements of not being in control of your life, but then you have control elements as well. So you can see how there's exaggeration. When you're feeling stressed, you kind of regress to that. So if you recognize that, then you can start to reframe, which is the 3rd column here. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a tough situation. So you're being kind to yourself. Any human in my scenario would feel stressed in this circumstance. But then you talk to yourself, well, it's not useful to kind of get myself so worked up. And if I just take this a step at a time, I can probably get through this and I can find the good stuff that's going to happen here and I can connect with people. And so you start to think about how you can reframe in a positive way, recognizing that it can be tough at the same time. Okay, that's number 1. Situation number 2, hearing somebody who's got COVID. So like it's a friend of a friend or somebody at a home, or maybe it's a relative, and you go like, they have got COVID. And then you think to yourself, if that person got COVID, then so will I. I'm going to get it for certain. And if I'm going to get it, it's going to be really bad, and I'm going to have to go to the hospital, and bad things are going to happen. So it's the same idea of kind of working yourself up, creating a hypothetical situation where instead, and you can see how all that exaggeration, you could be thinking to yourself, yeah, it's scary to think about this, but I don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know. And so we can stay in that kind of open space. Worrying is not going to help. I can choose my best life in the meantime. Okay, this is an interesting one. Somebody who goes to the kind of positive psychology, positive seminars, And they go away thinking, well, they say you're supposed to stay positive, but the fact is I feel awful, angry, helpless, filled with despair. I'm afraid I'm making it worse. Well, first of all, having emotions is okay. I'm not trying to work with the emotions. I'm trying to work with the core belief, which is you have to stay positive all the time. And that's just not, you're just not able to do that. It's hard to do. It takes extra energy and it's not realistic. And so therefore we can kind of let go of trying to put on the happy mask and stay positive all the time. I'd rather you be authentic. I think that's what we take away here. So the reframe is it's natural to have strong and negative feelings. I'm learning to comfort myself and ask for reassurance from others. I can work with my state of mind and that helps. So again, we're being kind to ourselves, realizing that we're not going to be perfect and that we're going to work with whatever happens, and we can practice these techniques that I'm talking about and feel better and be stronger and not try to be something that we're not. Okay, I want to just tell you the last thing, and this is leading up to an exercise called Taking in the Good. And it's the North American native tale of the two wolves and the hart. And it's the grandson who approaches the grandmother, and this grandmother's this wonderful, positive, beautiful character who's, you know, well esteemed and respected, and people go to her and they just love being with her. And he says, "Grandmother, how is it that you're so positive and wise and caring, and, you know, people love you so much? How did that happen?" And the grandmother says, "You know, when I was about your age, when I was a teen, I recognized that there were two wolves in my heart. There was the wolf of love and the wolf of fear. And depending on which wolf I fed would be the wolf that would grow throughout my lifetime." So I tell you that story because we all have two wolves in our hearts, right? And the idea is on the day-to-day to choose the wolf of love, to choose to let your great spirit out, to choose to be the light or the model for the other people around you. But it takes practice, because if you practice being agitated and upset, you get good at that. And if you practice being, you know, however you want to put it, if you practice being centered, kind, compassionate, grateful, you get good at it. And so I want to finish off this part of the presentation with just a quick little exercise called Taking in the Good from Rick Hansen. And the idea is to think of a state of mind that you want to manifest more of. So I want you to think of that right now. What do you want to have more of in your life in terms of a mental state? You know, is it peace? Is it confidence? Is it gratitude? Is it a sense of joy or love? Whatever it is that you want to feel more of, I want you now to try to generate that sense of emotion in your body. So you can even close your eyes right now if you want to. And remember a time when you were feeling that state of connection, that state of positive emotion. What was happening around you? I want you to keep yourself there, kind of visualize yourself going through it. Who was there? Were you by yourself? What did you hear in the environment? How did your body feel? What emotions came through? What was your experience? Experience it again now. Now imagine that as you're experiencing now, those neurocircuits, your brain circuitry is actually experiencing it again, and it's getting ingrained in your brain. And it's dropping down into your heart, so kind of the emotional level is also being imprinted. Very nice. So we'll stop at the visualization there. So I probably kept you there for, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds at most. And by doing that, you had that experience, and you can get better at a state of mind by either visualizing that experience or actually having the experience itself, having, you know, a sense of confidence and peace and so on. So feed the wolf of love essentially is the takeaway, and you can practice that, you know, 6 times a day for at least 15 to 20 seconds. You have to hold it for at least long enough for that to kind of embed in your brain tissue. Okay, so lastly, the fact that you're coming to this seminar and thinking about your greatest fears actually gives you resilience, right? So instead of pushing it down into the subconscious mind. I'm not going to look about my fear of getting COVID or, having my chemotherapy delayed or, those type of things. You actually look at them very directly and you recognize, okay, well, that's just my body and my mind worrying about the future. And you kind of bring it to consciousness and you recognize that that's your life force energy. And then you kind of say, well, okay, well, it's not worth persisting there, that there's a bigger purpose here, that I can transcend the sense of the emotional, physical reaction of fear, and then choose through the activities that I've kind of pointed towards how you want to live your life. And so you bring more meaning and purpose, and then you become, the person that people enjoy hanging out with because you brought your positive, loving character, your great spirit into the world. And it's probably the other thing I want to kind of push here is that your connection with other people are super important. So use this opportunity to call those friends, to connect with your relatives. That is healing. That decreases your stress level. It kind of embeds you in the tribe and is very, very helpful for your health in lots of different ways, including, asking for help and giving help whenever possible also is very powerful. I just want to finish off with a selfless plug for our book. It's The Healing Circle. It's the teachings from an entire weekend retreat, and we've had 64 retreats in 30 cities. So I teach body, mind, spirit connection, and every second chapter is a story of somebody who's attended the retreats and got kind of rave reviews. And obviously during this time, you can order this online. We can courier it to you, and I'd love to connect. Please visit healingandcancer.org. Lots of other lectures there. There's the healing skills like Qigong meditation, lots of other free activities and lectures, and the healing skills portion of the website. So, and you can always order the book online. So thanks guys for being here. Very, very happy to answer questions. Gabrielle's going to moderate, I'm sure.
Thank you, Dr. Rutledge, for that presentation. Yeah, so definitely we did get a few questions while during the presentation. I just want to remind everyone, if you want to send in your questions, please send it through the there's a question section in the software that you've downloaded to view this webinar. Type in your question and I will receive it. So the first question I have here, it's not really related to the pandemic per se. It's more in general when it comes to someone who's been diagnosed with myeloma, a cancer like myeloma. And obviously it's very stressful to go through the diagnosis and to go through the treatment and all that, but then you get to the point where you're in remission and you almost feel like you're more anxious at that point. Why does that happen, and how can you deal with that?
Yeah, so first of all, the hats off. It's such a good question, is to recognize that we are going to have a fluctuation of the emotional response. Oftentimes when people are first diagnosed, incredible kind of stressful event, they're trying to gain a lot of information, they're getting the best care from the medical system, they're going through their treatments, the medical system's watching them, and then what's what I call the post-treatment meltdown. So like that first 2, 3, 4 months, suddenly people aren't being watched as closely. Suddenly you're having to go back to your previous life to say, well, how can I integrate, myeloma diagnosis with what I'm going to do with the rest of my life? And all the kind of uncertainty to kind of flare up again. So first of all, it's just to say that's normal and expected. But then, this whole presentation is around, well, let's kind of go to the source of this. What's making me feel so anxious? What are my greatest fears? And one of the things I would say is go talk with a professional, right? Go talk with a counselor, your family doctor, social worker, somebody. And even that hour-long session of just being open and honest and laying it on the table to say, this is how I'm feeling, is super helpful. And then recognize that, again, you have incredible resilience, and through practicing, you can integrate what's happened into your life. Okay, I have a diagnosis, but I'm going to decide how I want to live my rest of my life. Even if I've got 2 years to go or 12 years to go or longer, how do I want to live? And then when you start to focus on how you want to respond, then the fears become smaller. They don't go away, but they become smaller.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, we mentioned a little bit about how to boost the immune system with these techniques. And so, what are the I guess the things to do and the things to avoid when it comes to helping the immune system?
Yeah, so that was kind of the summary of the talk in some sense. And so I don't want you to be stressed about stress, right? Because you think, oh, so I'm stressed now, and therefore I'm depleting my immune system, and that's making me feel more stressed, et cetera. So we want to get into the positive loop here, which is if you can kind of settle down the normal nervous agitation of this time, you will get stronger, right? And so it's all the practical stuff here. And it's no like, if I wish I could say to you, take 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C. It's not as simple as that. It's more like your immune system is very complicated, and you want to do all the things that I talked about in terms of diet, of exercise, of stress reduction, of doing the work, of finding meaning. I mean, even writing a gratitude journal could actually boost your immune system just by that alone. At the end of the day, 5 things that you're very, very grateful for. And they can be the simplest things like, oh, I had a really nice cup of coffee this morning, or it was wonderful to be able to go out in the balcony and feel some spring air. Those type of things. When you get into that space, it's kind of like your body saying, this is worth being alive. And that boosts all the healing systems, the healing potential, your immune function. So you want to get into that kind of positive emotional state, however you can do it. So that's, in addition to what I said, that's, I think, a little bit of advice.
Fantastic, awesome. So next question here. We talked briefly about naps. Now,
Mhm.
naps. Do you really need to fall asleep during a nap, or is closing your eyes enough, or
Mm.
what constitutes a nap, or what can help?
This is actually a great question. And what I understand is even closing your eyes for 5 minutes shuts down all that kind of visual stimulation. And we're probably visually overstimulated right now. And so even 5 minutes of shutting down the occipital lobe and all that circuitry is helpful. I know for myself, I just need a few minutes of REM, and that's essentially when the dreams get a little bit bizarre, and even just a few minutes of like being out of it, it's almost as if part of our brain can shut down so that the other part of the brain can take over, so the other part can kind of clean itself. There's some really interesting science around sleep now, and that is they think that during sleep the blood vessels actually can narrow a little bit, which allows more of the kind of or the brain cells narrow a little bit, which allows the fluid to flush out the toxins. And in the blood vessels are the ones that are kind of creating the pressure in order to flush the tissue. So there's some really good science around sleep. And we definitely know when we're tired, we flip our lid and we're living out of our stressed and irritable brain.
Thank you. So I think we have just maybe 2 more questions we can fit in here. Um,
Okay.
So, some people, because of the stress, might get some headaches or some neck tension. What can we
Mhm.
do to help with that?
Yeah. So great. So that's showing the mindfulness, right? And so as your day is going along, and sometimes I suddenly get the headache myself, and I think, oh, geez, I'm feeling stressed right now. So it's the cue or the tension, because the stress hormones cause the muscles to be contract, and so you get the kind of neck pain and kind of headache pain, or the jaw pain, could be any of those things. So it's the cue to say, okay, I need to settle myself down at this point. And that's the point where you practice the breath technique, or you reframe, or you slow down from activity, or you withdraw from the agitating activity. So it's a really good mindfulness, really good reminder to say, watch for your own particular cues and settle yourself down as early as possible.
Great. Now, we had just another question here that came in. We talked a little bit about, you had mentioned sugar. Um,
Mhm.
some people turn to various things like sugar, they turn to alcohol or other substances, and some
Mhm.
people say, oh, it makes me feel better. but what's the science behind that? And is something like sugar something that should be completely eliminated, or are there still some benefits here and there for?
Well, yeah, moderation and moderation. I mean, I would say you want a diet that's high in fruits. Sorry, I say vegetables and fruits. Vegetables mostly with some fruits. The fruits do have some sugar in them, but it's really how quickly that sugar gets into the system. So it's the difference between drinking a glass of orange juice and eating an orange. In eating an orange, you got the fiber and it slows the absorption of the sugar. When you drink that glass of orange juice, you're just like getting sugar right into your bloodstream ASAP. Our bodies need sugar. People say, what sugar feeds cancer. Well, every cell in your body needs sugar because it converts into that molecule. So the idea is how you metabolize it, kind of how quickly it comes up, and more importantly, it's like having a nutrient dense foods so that when you eat those calories, you're getting a lot of the other minerals and vitamins that are really healthy for healing and allow your immune system to function better.
Okay, thanks. And so the last question, we're all stuck home now because of this pandemic. Some people might have some grandchildren that they want to see, but they can't see. How do you talk to children? How can you tell them, we can't see each other right now, and how can you help them deal
Mm.
with stress?
Yeah, do you know what? It obviously depends on the age of the child. Like the young kids, you want to be, much more positive. But I really think it's good to model just, having a full emotional experience. So even if somebody, kids are 6, 7, 8 years old, you want to be able to say, this is really frustrating. I miss you a lot, and we can talk on the phone. And this is gonna, the pandemic's gonna go away. In a few months' time, we'll be able to play again. So I think the kind of honest, authentic perspective, sharing your emotions, being positive, looking forward to good times, because this too shall pass, right, guys? The pandemic's going to pass. We're going to be on with our lives post-pandemic. So, yeah, look for the positives. Video conference, enjoy.
Awesome. So I have one more question that just came in as we were talking. Do you have time for this one last one,
Sure,
or?
definitely go for it. Yeah,
Okay, so this one's a little bit more myeloma related because
yep,
dexamethasone is
yep.
something that practically every myeloma patient will be taking, and it has its
That's
own
right.
string of effects, side effects.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, how do you deal with, what comes with taking something like dexamethasone
Yeah.
from a spiritual perspective?
Yeah, no, I just hats off. You're pointing exactly at the truth. One is to recognize it's going to change. It's going to change almost every system in your body, including your sleep patterns, including your mood, including your appetite. It's like has a lot of different effects. And I don't want to kind of sugarcoat all this. Is just to try to make the best out of the situation, right? Look for those moments where you're happy, where you're connected. Take your decks in the morning so maybe you're able to better sleep at night. But really take care of yourself in all senses. And it's other reason why it's better to be in good shape and really take care of your gut and exercise and do all the things I'm talking about. Before you take decks, during you take, during decks and after decks, it's all going to help in the long term.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I guess with that, that ends our webinar. Dr. Rutledge, thanks again for
Not
taking
at
the time
all.
out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us. And of course, I know that you have a weekly meetings that you do with your foundation, Healing in Cancer,
Yeah.
and you can find all that information on the website, I'm sure. So
Yep.
thanks again, and enjoy your rest of afternoon and evening.
Thanks very much. Take care, everybody.
Yeah,
Blessings to you
thanks.
all.
Bye bye.